morning. The time is 9:06 and you're tuned into Luta Continua here on CKCU 93.1. I'm Monique Fuller. My interview today is with Michèle Hozer, the producer, editor, and director of the documentary film Sugar Coated. Coincidentally, today is also Food Revolution Day, a day dedicated to the fight to put practical food education into the school curriculum. However, after watching Michèle Hozer's documentary about the sugar industry, it could be easily argued that we all, young and old, need a re-education about food, especially when it comes to sugar. Sugar is everywhere. It's delicious, it's addictive, and it's been linked to many chronic ills such as obesity and fatty liver disease. In Sugar Coated, Michèle Hozer exposes the sugar industry and the effects sugar has on our bodies. Joining me by telephone this morning from Toronto is Michèle. Good morning, Michèle, and welcome to Luta Continua.
Thank you very much, Monique.
Michèle, why did you want to make this film?
Great question. I'm a career dieter, I'm a mom, I'm a runner, and diet has always been important in our lives, not only to maintain the waistline, but more importantly, how it affects our health.
I came across Dr. Lustig's YouTube video about sugar a few years ago and then went on a mini binge watching whatever I could about sugar and discovered that sugar is a really big topic. How did you decide what to focus on for the film?
Exactly. As you said, I too stumbled upon Rob Lustig's video. It was when I first went to an Alzheimer's conference here in Toronto, and who's not afraid of getting Alzheimer's, and it linked diet to the disease of the brain, and it even linked our overconsumption of sugar. And it's been in the news for the last 3 or 4 years as if this is new. Oh, my God, have you heard sugar is toxic? And it's only when our team discovered 2 sort of vintage documentaries from the 70s that showed me that, oh, my God, this debate isn't new. We were talking about this 40 years ago. And I was actually shocked that scientists knew that sugar had these links to disease, and in fact, they were even thinking of putting tobacco-style warning labels on sugary goods back in the 70s. And then all of a sudden, this debate stopped. It disappeared. And I was wondering what happened, and it was only until we had discovered Kristen Kearns and these secret documents that she unearthed explaining a PR campaign from the sugar industry that I realized there's a much bigger story to be told.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about sugar?
Biggest misconception is that it's natural. So everyone tells me, I mean, this is one of the biggest questions to me is, well, what about honey? And what about agave? Isn't that natural? Isn't it a natural part of our food system? And in fact, sugar is not, we don't need as human beings to consume sugar to live. We need fat, we need carbohydrates, we need everything else, but we don't need sugar. And I think that that's a very big misconception. And let it be honey, refined sugar, agave, high fructose corn syrup, when consumed in excess, and that's the important part, when consumed in excess, it creates havoc in your body.
You just mentioned a few things there, honey, agave. Sugar goes by many, many different names, which can be challenging for consumers to know what they're consuming. Do you think that's done on purpose?
Of course it is. There are 56 names for sugar. I didn't know this. And so on the label, they can have 3 or 4 added sweeteners to your foods and packaged food, and you don't even know how much sugar it is because it's sort of hidden in plain sight. And when they divided, those labels, the number one product is the first one listed. But when they sweeten the products with 4 or 5 different sweeteners, it doesn't become the first ingredient. It becomes the 3rd or 4th. So it's extremely planted. I wouldn't say planted, but it's definitely employed by the market, by the food industry, to not really let you know how much sugar is actually in your food.
So really the danger in many ways, you'd say, is the hidden sugar in packaged foods. And not just packaged foods, something else that comes up in the film, because I don't want to give away too much, is juices as well.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. And in fact, if anything that we change as a household in our family is that we don't have juice in our table anymore. It's just been replaced by water because you think juice is healthy. It's got vitamins. But when you free the sugar from its natural sources, some people say juice is just as bad as soda, and with a little bit of vitamins. And that was really shocking. And same thing with smoothies. We think smoothies are good, and God, I love smoothies. But again, when you release the sugar from the fiber and all the other content, it really creates it just becomes free sugar that can overload with your liver. And I like using the example of if you were to eat an orange, how many oranges would you eat? One?
Yeah, exactly.
But when you drink an orange juice, you're consuming much more than one orange. And so it's just all this excess calorie at the same time that you wouldn't do it if you were eating your fruit as opposed to drinking them.
I heard that your film was screened to a sold-out audience at Hot Docs. Were you surprised at how people seem to be drawn to this topic? I mean, I know that it's sort of been gathering more and more steam again, but were you surprised to see that many people were interested in hearing about sugar and the dangers of the sugar industry?
It was a very nice surprise. Before the actual festival started, we had 3 full sold-out shows. So that was really heartwarming in a certain sense that I think Canadians are starting to realize that health and welfare is important. And as opposed to taking pills and stuff, I think if you change your diet, you can have a healthier lifestyle. And, this topic has been around in the last 3 or 4 years, and I think people are really interested in hearing what sugar does to us, especially parents and even individuals. Having a birthday cake every day having a birthday cake once in a while is good, but it's all those hidden sugars that in your daily diet that I think people are really not interested in consuming anymore.
In the film, you draw a connection between the sugar industry and the tobacco industry. Can you explain that connection for us?
Yes. So I want to make a point that I'm not comparing the substance in terms of what it does to your body. I'm more comparing the industry tactics. And these tactics are exposed in these secret documents that our dentist, Dr. Kristen Kearns, found in a defunct sugar factory. So as I was saying, in the 60s and 70s, there was this debate about sugar, like it is now, going on in the 60s and 70s. And it was so strong that the sugar industry wanted to protect their interests, put together a PR campaign. And they employed the same tactics as the tobacco industry. For example, there was scientific evidence out there that started showing links between sugar and chronic diseases. So the sugar industry, all they needed to do was bring up other research to create doubt and sort of not get consensus. Because if there's a consensus, that means that governments and policymakers have to do something about it. And these tactics have been used by the tobacco industry. And in fact, some people who've worked for the sugar industry have moved over to the tobacco industry. And I think that it's important for Canadians to know that the food industry and the sugar industry have vested interest in not allowing us to understand what sugar does to our health.
I remember a couple of years ago hearing about the possibility of a tax on soda, and there was a little bit of a kickback against that. And one of the main reasons was that people felt, or at least some people felt, that there should be freedom to eat whatever you want. How do you think that argument fits into this discussion around the dangers of sugar, or looking at sugar as a toxic substance, this idea that you should be able to eat whatever you want?
That's right. That's right. There's this libertarian view that get government out of my kitchen, or don't tell me what to eat. And our character Rob Lustig would happily say, "You've already allowed people to decide what to eat by allowing all this sugar to be in your packaged food. And you might not want government in your kitchen, but what if you have someone more dangerous like the food industry? So I think it's important. At the end of the day, the food industry and the sugar industry, their job is to sell products and to make a profit. And that's what they're about. But their job is not to protect the health and welfare of Canadians. That's our job. That's government's job. And it's been shown that putting tax and regulation slows down consumption, but it has to be at a certain level of taxation. So not 5%. Some people say 20% is where change actually occurs. The other thing we call for, not necessarily taxation, is to put a daily recommended limit on sugar consumption. We have one for fat, we have one for salt and carbohydrates, but we don't have one for sugar. And there's a good reason, because the sugar industry and the food industry really doesn't want us to have one. Because imagine if we adopt here in Canada the World Health Organization limit of anywhere between 6 and 12 teaspoons a day of sugar. A bottle of 20-ounce soda would be above that daily recommended limit. And the food industry has no interest in having that being implicated in our Canadian products.
One of the interesting things I find about documentaries is the fact that unlike a narrative film where you have a script, you create a story, documentaries sort of have a life of their own. They unfold in ways that sometimes a filmmaker doesn't even know or sometimes understand. How did this film unfold for you? What was the impetus for making this film? When did you say, I think I'm going to make a film about sugar? And how did you find some of the people like Dr. Kearns?
That again, as I was saying, I've always been interested in diet-related issues and how it affects our health. And I was at this Alzheimer's conference, and then I linked into an article from 2011 from the New York Times asking the question: is sugar toxic? And of course, it's a current affairs issue. So there have been films already out there and television shows. The Fifth Estate did a piece. I don't know if you heard about the film last year called Fed Up. They also did a film on sugar consumption, looking more at obesity in kids. But when I found Kristen Kearns and her papers, which with a bit of research we were able to locate, for me, the diet issue is important, but I think what's important is how society deals with an issue. What are the patterns that societies do around these debates? And I think it's that old adage about history repeating itself. We've done this 30 years ago, and we're back at the same spot. Are we going to allow the food industry and sugar industry to once again create a PR campaign to make us forget that maybe sugar is bad for us? And I think that's what's important is finding patterns in society to help us grow into a better society.
Michèle, you had many different roles in this film. You were the director, the editor, and the producer. Were you able to completely focus?
Yeah.
That was quite a bit. Were you able to focus completely on one role at a time and tune out the others, or did you find that they sort of crisscrossed and influenced each other?
Yes, that's a great question. It is hard to wear many hats, but I do have an amazing team with my executive producer, Janice Dahl, who helped deal with the broadcasters and the whole kind of producing in. Editing and directing is a lonely job, especially in the edit room. You're sort of asking the questions, and there's only you to answer them. So I have a very good writer, Roxana Spicer, who's a veteran journalist. She's able to come in and help with the process. It's very important to have a very good creative team where you can share the roles and take your initial ideas and test them out and get them to grow, because on your own it's very hard. So I did use my writer, my producer, my associated producer, because we're a small team, we all share the different positions, because on your own it is very hard, even though I do share all those credits.
What was the biggest challenge in making this film?
I think the biggest challenge is, first of all, getting the information out in an entertaining way. There's the science. You know, people want the science, but they don't want too much. So how much do you give to get the audience to understand the dangers of sugar? But at the end of the day, film is still an entertaining medium, and the idea is you want to tell a good story. And that was really important for us. And another thing that I did personally, I don't know about you, but I love sugar. And it's very much part of our culture. So at the same time, I wanted to show that the food industry had their vested interest in getting us to keep eating sugar. But it was important to show how it seeped into our culture. It's in our books. It's in our music. It's the way we talk to each other by calling each other sweetheart or honey. And so even if it's a big challenge for society to slow down our consumption of sugar, because it's so important in our culture.
And I think for me, that point was made very clear in the film when I heard the Nutcracker sweet music, the dance of I think it's the Sugar Plum Fairy. And it really hit me.
That's right.
At that point in time, I started laughing. And I thought, wow, it's even in our arts.
Exactly. And the world over knows that sweet. And we, it's part of our Christmas. Find a holiday that doesn't have sugar in it. It's the way we express love, and I think that was extremely important, not only to blame the food industry, but to show that we have a role to play in it, because it's so steeped into our society. And the other thing I wanted to do is, again, film is a visual medium. There's a reason why we love sugar so much, because it looks so beautiful. So I wanted to make sure to have all those beautiful shots of sugar and ice cream and cake, because we have such a weakness. And I'll tell you, that was one of the hardest things about the film, is slowing my own sugar consumption down.
You mentioned before that you love sugar, and I think it would be hard to find someone out there who doesn't love sugar. What's your sugar weak spot?
Oh, my sugar weak spot? See, I was born in Belgium near a chocolate factory. So my mom said the smell was always around. And I just loved chocolate. And growing up, we used to have a baguette, a French baguette, and cut it open and just put a slab of chocolate in it, and that was my weakness. So I had to sort of slow that down. Have it at special occasions. But what we're doing now is eating it every day.
And again, we're eating it every day in many ways because it's in these hidden foods, and we don't know what we're eating.
That's right. And on average, Canadians are consuming close to over 16 teaspoons of free sugars a day. That's a lot of sugar that you don't necessarily need.
I can't remember what the stats are, but I do remember seeing somewhere that part of the issue that we're having with sugar right now is that we're eating more and more sugar. We're eating more sugar today than we were, let's say, 40 years ago.
We're eating more sugar. That's right. Today, I think we are consuming, as I said, and we have to make the difference between natural occurring sugars and added sugars. The natural occurring sugars you find in dairy, vegetables, and fruit. That's not what we're worried about. It's those hidden and added sugars. And Stats Canada quote that teenage kids now consume of total sugar, so that's natural and added sugar, between 30 and 41 teaspoons of sugar a day. That's a lot. And then for teenagers, their number one consumption is soda beverages. And we don't really need soda beverages, so it's really disconcerting to see that that's what the kids are consuming. That's where they're getting their sugar content.
So it's not even like it's from juice, which might have some benefits, although it's full of sugar, or even a smoothie. We're talking about fizzy water with colorants in it and sugar.
As you know, we're playing in we're playing at the Mayfair next week on May 21st.
Yes, and you are going to be in attendance, I believe?
We are, yes.
When you say we...
And one of our characters, Joni Friedhoff, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
One of our characters of the film, Dr. Joni Friedhoff from Ottawa, will also be a special guest at the screening. So we'll have quite a lively Q&A.
Yes, and he was great in the film. I have to say, you did a wonderful job in getting this issue out and making it fun, not intimidating, and not too preachy. I want to ask you quickly before we end the show, Michèle, you and your co-producers have developed a sugar app. Where did the idea for the app come from?
Well, again, it's from the idea that there's not this daily recommended limit. And Health Canada is not leading on this. So we thought, when you watch these films, you want to then help Canadians change their habits. So this sugar tracker app called One Sweet App, you can download it from the iTunes store, and it's again called One Sweet App, all one word, all lowercase. And you can take it to the grocery store and scan in your favorite product, and you can see how much hidden sugar are in your favorite product. And you can set a goal, and you can set the goal of the World Health Organization or today the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada that have their daily recommended limit between 6 to 12 teaspoons a day. And you can set that limit on the tracker and see if you actually meet the goal or exceed it. And you can track your consumption for the week, for the month, and you see where go over. Is it weekends? Is it when you go out with your best girlfriends? And you'll be able to decide how much sugar you want in your diet by tracking it. I think it's a question of awareness.
Michèle, thank you so much for joining us this morning. This has been a great conversation, and I definitely will encourage people to get out to the Mayfair on May 21st to see the documentary Sugar Coated.
Thanks so much, Monique.
You have a good day, Michèle.
Thanks, you too.
Actually, Michèle, I should say that you should have a sweet day.
Yes, thank you too.
Okay, once again, thanks very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was director, editor, and producer Michèle Hozer. Michèle will be in Ottawa at the Mayfair on May 21st for the screening of her documentary Sugar Coated at 6:30 p.m. That's it for this edition of Luta Continua. I'm Monique Fuller signing off. Until next week.